but we're not going to start until I say we're starting. All right. Anybody have any other questions? But hopefully I should answer those in the intro as we get started. All right. Did everybody get the form on race topical outline? Everybody get that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so cool. So at least, and leave it to me to make a departure from that and go, okay, yeah, I know I said this, but let's try this, All right. And we don't have any time limits on this. So like I said, we just want to make sure we're going somewhere. We don't want to get caught in any circular arguments or, and things like that, which I don't think is going to happen because, like I said, I know you all, which is the biggest benefit that I know everybody here, and I know that everybody can have this dialogue, and it's going to be really, really good. All right. So nothing else. And you got to stop all that moving. If you're going to move like that, Adam, you got to have your thing muted. I'm hearing all your little sounds, whatever.
Oh.
All right. So, hey, and by the way, on that sheet, if you've got that sheet, if you got this sheet, if you don't have this sheet, let me go ahead and give you all the order, because once I say we're going to start introductions, I'll be first. Then we're going to go across that sheet. So it means it'll be Adam. So Adam will be first after me. Daryl in. Then Sierra's not on. So we'll go to, neither is Brun. So we'll go to Joseph will be next. Kim Crooms, Joshua Bach, Isabel Hunt, David Unruh, and Renita Hill. Right. So that'll be the order. I'll actually identify you as you're coming up though. So don't sweat that. So no problem. Okay. All right, no other questions. I'm going to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then I'll intro. No questions? Hey, well, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Welcome to the American Unity Movement Forum on Race. I'm humbled to have my splendid array of guests here this evening. The fact that they would grace me with their presence means simply that they are great people and that I know great people. And so I'm really excited about the topics that we'll be discussing this evening, because they're not things that are easily talked about in our society, but because of these people, and I know who they are, the fact that they're here, then we're a step ahead of the rest of America, because we are people who can sit down and talk about it. And I think their being here this evening tells you exactly what type of people they are. So first of all, I want to thank you all for coming out. I'm very appreciative. And so I will definitely show you that appreciation. Give me that address so I can get you at least an Erase Race t-shirt. We get some marketing out of it. So make that happen. All right. So our panel consists of these 8 people, of course, with me as the moderator. They're from all varying walks of life. And we're going to get their personal viewpoints on the questions and issues of race that we're addressing this evening. There will be time for free-flowing discussion, and I will serve as the moderator for the debate to ensure that we remain focused and on the subjects that we intend to cover this evening. Our format will consist of 4 rounds of discussion with 1 major question or theme in each round. We will not be time limited, but as a moderator, I may interrupt if we're being repetitious or circular in our discussions. There isn't a requirement for any of you to have to give your viewpoint on every issue. If someone's articulating your same viewpoint, then you can simply say amen or acknowledge that. And so don't feel a requirement to have to speak up. But if you do have a different viewpoint that you want others to consider, then please do that, because that's what it's about, having this free-flowing dialogue and discussion. So we'll begin now with our introductions in 1 minute or less. And so try to keep it brief here. In 1 minute or less, I want you to identify who you are, where you live, family background, what you do, and what you intend to get out of this evening's discussion. Now, at first I said, when I gave you the homework, I said your concept of race, but I want to change that up right now and just tell me, because some people came here because they have something to offer, and I have a different ideology that I think people need to hear. And you might be here with that viewpoint, or you might say, I'm really coming to listen. I want to hear what other people think about the subject. And those aren't the only 2 options. There could be anything in between there, or more extreme than either of those. So just, like I said, you've only got a minute. So just analyze for a second why you're here and tell us that, deliver it to us, and we'll be happy. Okay. So that's it. And after that, then we'll begin, because if anybody's got any other questions, then we'll get to our first question in the first round, which will be, what do you think of the concept of race? So that'll be the first round question. So you don't have to cover that in your intro. Just identify why you're here. You want to hear, or you want people to hear you. Okay. All right. So I'll start with myself. I am Carlin Charleston. You know me. Everyone in here knows me. I'm the executive director of Erase Races. And I have the benefit, or the privilege, I would say, of being the only person here who knows everybody, which is really cool. My background, I graduated from North Texas in 1985 with a computer science degree. Then I went to the Marine Corps, did 20 years, retired, and then taught high school level for 12 years. In the middle of that, had a barbecue business, which was really fun. I'm married. My wife is an attorney. We've got kids from kind of everywhere because we have a lot of kids that aren't ours who've lived with us. We've got an adopted son from Ghana. We've got 2 daughters, got a son. So it's been pretty fun, and we like going out doing crazy things now. And basically, I'm here because I really want to hear everyone else's viewpoints. I've done a lot of research over the past few years on the subject of race, and I'm here really to hear everybody's viewpoints. And I think you'll have a lot to offer. So with that said, we'll turn it over to Adam for your 1 minute go.
Hey, I'm Adam Johns. I live in Okinawa, Japan, which is an island about 1,000 miles south of mainland Japan, 72 miles long and 14 miles wide at the widest, 1.4 at the smallest. Little geography for anybody who hasn't been out to Japan. And it's got 1.4 million people on this little island. I'm married, live here with my wife of 17 years almost, 2 young children, boys 8 and 13 are their ages. I'm a U.S. Marine pilot, currently not flying, but flew the 46, VH-3, VH-60, and V-22. I'll hit 20 years next year, planning to retire and go into full-time ministry. An idea of uniting, serving, mentoring, and counseling ministries, as well as USMC. So we'll see how that pans out. I support Carlin in his move of erase race, realizing that it's a social construct that's deeply hurt our society. And I know that it is a scientific, it is not real.
What are you here for? What are you here for? To hear or to be heard?
Both, I guess.
Okay. But yeah, because we'll cover that in the next round. We'll cover the race stuff in the next round.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted me to also mention my concepts on that.
No, we're going to do that. That's going to be our first round. We'll cover that in the first round.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Cool. Next up, D. Wynn.
How you doing, people? My name is Daryl Wynn. I live in San Leandro, California, which is just south of Oakland. I am a San Francisco native, born in Oakland, raised in San Francisco. I'm an electrician, currently work at UC Berkeley. I've been an electrician since 1988. I'm currently widowed. I have 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and I'm a mentor. I mentor young men, helping them get into college and through college. And I'm here to hear some differing views. I've encountered Adam. Adam and I have talked before, which was interesting conversation, right, Adam? And so when Carlin told me he would be on the call, I said, well, you know, let me have an open mind and see what I can learn and what I can teach. So I'm glad to be here. Great, great. Okay, Mr. Clemens.
Well, good afternoon or good morning to my brother there in Okinawa, or good evening, everybody else. As Carlin said, my name is Joe Clemens. I live in Folsom, California, which is a small city just northeast of Sacramento, California capital. I live with my wife, Lucy, of 40 years. I am a retired sergeant of inspectors of San Francisco Police Department, and inspectors are what other departments call detectives. I did that for 30 years before I retired. And in that same time, I was the lead instructor at our academy, and I taught classes I developed and taught a class throughout the state where it's called the Impact and Issues of Racial Profiling on the Community. And the other class I taught, amongst other investigation classes, I taught interpersonal communications. So basically, I taught most of the affective learning domains of the psychological aspect of being a police officer, or the courses that I taught, along with the issues and impact of racial profiling. And I'm here tonight just to continue a dialogue with individuals about the issue of race, and not only in America, but race in the world.
Outstanding. Thank you. Kim Crooms, unmute yourself and go.
Hi, everyone. Like he said, I'm Kim Crooms. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I work in the field of child welfare. I do strategic planning. I am the state's liaison to the federal government between the, I'm liaison between the state and the feds in child welfare. I've been doing that for over about 18 years. Also worked in public relations with the state as well. I have 2 college age sons. I am I'm divorced, was married for over 23 years, and I am looking forward to hearing what people have to say about race. But me and Carlin, we tend to debate quite a bit, so I have a feeling that there'll probably be some debates going on tonight as well.
Great, outstanding, Ms. Crooms. Thank you. And we're at Joshua Buck.
Hello, Josh Bach here. Thank you for having me. I am a resident of Indianapolis, Indiana, proud resident of Indianapolis, Indiana. Family, I have a wife, and I have been together for 26 years, very long time. And we have 5 daughters, all which are adopted. We're very passionate about adoption and fostering here in our community. All 5 of my daughters have different skin colors. So there's a wide range we could talk about a bit later on that tone. But into podcasting. I have a podcast and media company here in Indianapolis. We do a lot of community social events. I founded a nonprofit organization for financial literacy, work with a number of nonprofits here in the city of Indianapolis. What I hope to gain is just how I can contribute and how I can learn from each and every one of you. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's a conversation that I have almost on a daily basis through work and some of the things we do in the community. So honored to be here and glad to be with each and every one of you.
Thank you there, Mr. Bach. Outstanding. Okay, we're at the mighty Isabel Hunt.
I told my son about that. You call me that way. And he's like, huh, that's cute. That's cute. I'm like, okay.
The mighty Hunt.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate. My name is Isabel Hunt, as already said. I'm originally from Germany. I was born and raised close to the border to Czech Republic and have been living here in Indianapolis, Indiana for the last 11 years. I've been married for the last 10 years, and we have a 6-year-old son, as already mentioned, and we are hopefully we'll be able to adopt a little sister for him eventually. We're still in the process, so that takes a while. I'm a sociologist, speaker, and a filmmaker of the forthcoming documentary, The Power of Connection. And in my work, I focus on shattering cultural barriers and engaging in cultural transformation through emotional and self-awareness from a spiritual and philosophical perspective, especially. And I'm looking forward to hearing other opinions and just engaging in the conversation.
Outstanding, the mighty Hunt. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Unruh.
I'm David Unruh. I live in Tomball, Texas. I just retired after 32 years in education. The first 13 were in teaching and coaching in Corpus Christi, Texas. The last 19 were as a vice principal at Tomball. In Tomball, I do live in Tomball. I'm on my second marriage. Between my wonderful wife and myself, we have 4 children. And I'm proud to say our first granddaughter, who I adore. I think I bring an unbelievable different perspective than most people because I was raised in a very remote, rural, little bitty town of 500 people in southwest Kansas, and then began to play some football in college. And so my perspective has changed on race throughout my 58 years of life. I'm here to learn. It sounds like we have a great panel. And whenever I can interject, I will interject, and hopefully I'll be able to add something to the group. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thanks, Mr. Unruh. And last but not least, the mighty famous Renita Hills.
Okay, I figured I better unmute myself first. As you said, my name is Renita Hills. I was born in Harlem, raised in the South Bronx, and a little bit of a nomad, moved from New York to Georgia to Virginia to here. Been living in Indiana for about 11 years now. I am the founder and CEO of Voice of the Victim. Voice of the Victim works with victims and survivors of domestic abuse, sexual assault, and abusive behaviors. We've been doing this for about 10 years now. Every year we give away scholarships. Josh was out at our event last year, and we give away scholarships to high school seniors, first-time college freshmen. And our goal is to, ultimately, on one hand, to help victims and survivors to move from being a victim to a survivor, ultimately to a thriver, in spite of the abuse they've had to endure. And then secondly, in our youth program, Learn to Love Your Youth program, what we're doing with them is teaching them what abuse looks like. We're teaching them it's more than somebody hitting you. It's so much bigger than that. So we feel like if we can capture our babies and teach them what abuse looks like, it can probably and hopefully put me out of a job by the time they're an adult. They know what it is. They know what it looks like. They know how not to be abused and how to not be abusive. So that is our goal. I have graduated from Radford University in Radford, Virginia. I got a BS in communication with a concentration of public relations. Clearly, I'm shy. You see, I don't know why I got into public relations because I am just so shy. And when I'm here tonight, thank you for having me, Carlin. I just want to see different viewpoints. If I can gather pieces of the puzzle from you guys, I can take those puzzles and apply them to the people that I work with. I don't want anybody to feel like because of their skin color that they deserve or they want or they need and can't have. I want to get pieces from different avenues so I can better serve my community.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hills. Outstanding. Very good. Thank you very much. All right. And so that finishes our intros. We'll now begin with our first round of questioning. And so everyone will have 1 minute to give us your concept of race. And of course, as the race director, executive director, I will begin. So I've got my 60 seconds and I won't need 60 seconds to talk about it because then I think most of you know my viewpoint. But simply put, erase race and strengthen ethics. We really believe strongly in the message that Dr. King had that we really should judge people by their character, not by their skin color. I think, however, our society teaches us, the culture teaches us that race is important. And so we use it in forms and we use it in statistics, we use it in everything, we base things on race. And I think one of the things that we've got to do, what distinguishes us from other causes along the race spectrum are that we don't start with getting rid of racism, we start with the foundation of race. And we think if you got rid of that, then you would not have the fruit of that poisonous tree, which we think race is. And so I'm definitely for getting rid of the concept of race, and that's what I work towards. Okay? Now, if we'll go now during this round, make sure you take notes because we will have discussion after everyone gives their viewpoints. So you've got 1 minute and we'll start it, go in that same order. So you're up, Adam.
Okay, thank you, Carlin. Once again, I started to say it. I support your movement, race. Agree with you that it is not a real thing. I think I had a conversation with one of your friends about it being like a biological concept. So that was fun. I learned a lot through that. It's not scientific fact. And because I believe that it's caused much of the pain and death and deeply hurt the world, I'm definitely on board with you of getting rid of what you call a pernicious concept. Totally agree with that. I think it exists in the mind. It's an ideology people have. So asking the question, how do we fix it? It's by, helping people change their minds. I am not a huge believer in trying to change somebody's mind. I feel like the only person that can change a mind is that person. So you can change your own mind, but you can't change somebody else's mind. And because I'm passionate about helping people too, trying to go into ministry of uniting people, serving people, mentoring them, and counseling. I want to help them focus on 08 to that. And watching the Donahue with the other guy video that one of your friends shared, my son was overhearing it while he was doing his math homework, and he asked the question, why does it matter what the color of your skin is? And so my son's 13-year-old, and I appreciated that he didn't have a concept of race. So I feel like I've done a little bit of a good job. And the way I answered his question was.
Okay, very good. Very good. All right. Yep. Very good. Next up, we've got Mr. Joseph Clemens. 1 minute.
All
You're
right.
ready to go.
All right. Well, you skipped me, but that's okay. I mean, you skipped somebody. I was third, I thought. But
Oh, yeah.
okay.
I'm sorry. D win. My bad. Yeah, Daryl wins next.
Just rude, man. Just rude. So a little background. Like I said, I grew up in San Francisco in the 60s. I'm 61 years old. And I grew up in the Fillmore area. If you know about the Fillmore, they called it at one point the West Harlem. And grew up very much admiring and being serviced by the Black Panther Party. I wanted to be a Black Panther. When at my elementary school, St. Dominic's, I remember clear as day, a James Brown song, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." He had the whole schoolyard. We were just, and it was fun. It was a proud moment, just the unity we had. Since talking to Carlin, the term Black, I don't really like it anymore. I prefer to call myself an American of African ancestry. Of course, sometimes I do go back to, being acknowledged as a Black man. So I can get to, this race as a social construct and created. I mean, I didn't do the studying about it. I'm just going by what my brother says. I don't know the history of the creation of this thing. I just know the results of it. And the one thing I'm concerned about, often I hear when you say erase race, are you talking about erasing to me, it sounds like erasing our culture of African Americans. And that's where I have a problem. And then, yes, it would be nice to be everybody, and I agree with Josh, human. Yeah, we're all part of the human race. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But society has made this distinction. And from my perspective, the African American community has been harmed by it, been harmed by this concept of race, as you guys say. And so, again, I'm here to learn and
Okay, very good. Good. Got you. All right. Now, Mr. Joseph Clemens.
Okay, here I go. I agree with both Adam and Dee, and you too, Carlin. But just to, Dee, you and I grew up in the city at the same time. So I'm sure our paths must have crossed somewhere in the time, because I'm 60 and you're 61. And when you talk about the Black Panthers, both my older brothers were Black Panthers. So I was inducted into Black Panther movement at a very young age. So with that said, I understand what you're saying. And I don't think that when you erasing the concept of race should not erase the splendid cultures that everyone brings to the table. And I don't think that's what Carlin is saying. Carlin, you can speak for yourself, I'm sure, but that's how I feel. I feel that if we take this wall of race that seems to separate us and seems to make one race inferior, or one culture inferior, one superior, and it's used for so many disparaging things, but keep the rich culture that everyone brings to the table. Because every aspect of mankind, of humankind, everything that has been done to move humankind forward has not been done for one particular culture, or as we call it, race. It's been done for the benefit of mankind. And getting back to what Adam had said about changing someone's mind, you really can't change somebody's mind. You're right. What I try to change is their paradigm, how they see things, how they see the world. And that's even hard in changing a mind, because when you change someone's paradigm or have them change their paradigm, it's pretty much crushing the foundation on which they've developed their entire belief system on. You're telling them that belief system that you have about a certain subject is incorrect. And that's probably generational. So you're not only breaking their paradigm, you're breaking generational paradigms. So I agree. Race is just a concept that has been just put upon man by man.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Clemens. And now we're up to Miss Kim Yarda-Crooms.
Hi, everyone again. So I consider myself an idealistic pragmatist. I know oxymoron, but
I like that.
I agree that race is an imaginary, man-made construct, as people have been saying. But my question is, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Meaning, do we erase race in order to erase racism, or do we need to erase racism before we can erase race? And I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I do know that I believe that people rely on race. The reason why it's still around is because people rely on it for various reasons. At its worst, people rely on it to feel superior, or they rely on it because of the advantages they think come with being perceived as a victim. Then there's, at its best, some people rely on race because they want to celebrate their heritage and celebrate their culture. And then there's some people who want to hold on to it because they believe that's the only way we can really get to the root causes of studying disparities. And there's some very real, disparities out there, especially like health outcomes. So I'm somewhere where I guess I still have I just have questions.
Very good. Thank you there, Ms. Crooms. Outstanding. And now we're up to Joshua Buck.
Yes, man, I feel honored and privileged to be in this group because you guys are all challenging me. I agree with a lot of what you say, and it causes you're also stretching me a bit too. So I do believe that race is absolutely positively a man-made construct, and I believe it's a system and an idea that is designed to separate and divide. And so going back to what many of you have talked about, the idea of culture, culture needs to be embraced, and it should be embraced in order for us to find beauty in differences and find beauty in similarities. And so when it comes down to the struggles, I think each and every one of us have with this idea of what racism is, I believe that in order for us to really dive in and to erase racism, we need to dive in and realize what race was designed for the first place. And I believe that if we're able to break that down, yet embrace culture, embrace differences, and erase race, I believe racism will go to the wayside.
Outstanding. Thank you there, Mr. Buck. We're now at the mighty Hunt. Isabel.
Thank you. I am going to give a slightly different perspective, but I think it's going to be adding on to what Josh just said. It is said from a entomology perspective, I think that's the right word, that the word race was influenced by the Latin word radix. I have a small Latinum, so it was good. And radix, which is as root, is called root. And that relation influenced the meaning of the way we define race today when it comes to our different origins, as well as the labels that we have created from a sociological perspective. Therefore, I experience race as a general objective, as a definition that invites us to find our deepest roots within ourselves. And that is based, that is very spiritually based, because the deepest root, if we were to go down, 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 is the oneness within each other, the connection, oneness with all that is, from a energetic, metaphysic, quantum physical perspective. And so for me, the focus when it comes to race is really looking at how is it serving us, in which way is it serving either one side. I grew up in East Germany, so I have some race issues, or I grew up with some race issues when it comes to Russians, because we didn't want them there. And so that's just not a skin color, or maybe, well, I guess you would know if someone is Russian and someone is German, you see that. So it's just interesting to see the different perspective, how we define race from within a European perspective, when a lot of us have a lighter skin, and then coming to the US, experiencing that with almost like extreme physical differences that you don't see as much in Europe.
Very good. Good information for us all. We'll be talking about that, I'm sure. Okay, and now we're up to Mr. Unruh.
Okay, as I mentioned before, I was raised in a very small town in Southwest Kansas, and to the best of my knowledge, there still has not been African American / Black person living in that town in the 150 years it's been around. So raised without any kind of cultural influence. The only influence I had on what African Americans were was 3 channels on TV. And most of what came across on TV was portraying Black people as in a negative way, as militant, like I believe Daryl said, Black Panthers, Malcolm X, By No Means Necessary. They were, you know, all of them were, you know, either didn't do right by the law or something like that. And then, man, when Joseph said paradigm shift, that really resonated with me because I've had a lot of paradigm shifts about race throughout my 58 years, because I went from having no influence by the African American person to going to play college football, where we had 90 people on our team, 75 of them were Black guys, and my head coach, who I would call him a second father to me, Willie Jeffries at Wichita State, were huge positive influences in my life. So I'll leave you with this, and we'll get back to things later. I've come down to in the 58 years that I've been on the face of this earth, there's 2 types of people in this world. There's good people and there's bad people. And all races have good people and bad people. I believe that the similarities between all races, we are so much more similar than we are different. I mean, let's face it, we all want a better life for our kiddos, our own kids. We want to be good neighbors. We want to be, we want the best that we can get for ourselves, but be good neighbors. And so,
we got you. You're good. That's good.
But
Great.
I also, let me finish with this. I definitely think we need to embrace the differences and champion those differences also.
Okay, outstanding. All right. And Renita Hills.
Wow, for me, I'm listening to everybody. I have the fortunate spot of being last. So I'm listening to everybody, and I want to glean pieces from everyone. But I think I want to close it out for me is when I like I said, I was born in New York, and we were just there. We would go outside and we'd play. We'd have a great time. Phenomenal. Just kids were just kids. And I didn't realize I was Black till I moved to Georgia. And somebody literally said, while I was at work, I'm in college. And somebody literally said, my supervisor literally said, I don't care about you being from New York. You better remember where you are and get back there and do what I told you to do. That messed with my head because everybody else can say what they felt. Everybody else can say, no, I don't want to work that shift. Everybody else can say, no, I don't want to come in. You know, they can adjust their schedule. But the Black girl, and that's when I realized I was Black. And they changed my whole concept of people. So I say all that to say our children, when they go outside to play, they just see kids they want to play with. I want to jump rope with this person. I want to play basketball with this person. It isn't to us as adults that have gotten all this other stuff that has attached to us that we change the view. Our kids don't see color until we show them color. So with that being said, I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but that's where I am at now is how do we stop seeing the color and just see the character of a person's heart, see who you are. I like you because I like you, or I don't like you because of something you did. It has nothing to do with your skin color. It has to be with who you are and what you do, whether I do or not. And I can like you and not like something you did, but still like you. So how do we get to that place of being that little 5-year-old kid that played in the water hose with a can and shot water over out of the water hydrant at anybody who wanted to play? How do we get back to that place?
Very good. And so, you know, we started with some questions. We had some questions in the middle, and we ended with some questions. How do we get back to that place? And so now we're going to have free-flowing discussion. And so anybody can ask any question. Let's just be respectful of both time and make sure you address the concern or the issue that someone else brought up. And we'll do that until we've settled this issue of what we think the concept of race is and how we should view it. Okay, so anybody want to start?
I would
I
like
did
to
wanna
say
just throw
something
a
to Renita.
idea out there.
Okay, all right, Mr.
Go ahead.
Unruh is going to talk to Renita. Go ahead, Mr. Unruh.
Yes, sir.
Renita, what you said to me really resonated with me. And I really think that we're saying the same thing. When I say there's either good people or bad people, there's people I want to be around, and there's people I don't want to be around. It has nothing to do with their skin color. And then if I just like to tell you one story about my stepdaughter, Hannah, that my wife has told me several times, is when she was 8, she sat on a bus as a second grader all year long with an African-American girl. And in the spring, like March or something in the spring, Hannah came home to her mother and said, "Mom, did you know that," I forgot her name, I'll just say did you know Debbie was a black girl? And she sat on that bus with that girl nearly the entire school year and did not realize that there was any differences.
Mhm.
So what Renita is saying resonates with me.
Thank you.
And let me
Yeah, me
emphasize
too.
because Renita was saying that we teach race to our children. So,
Yes.
does anybody disagree with that? That this is a taught thing? Oh, go ahead, Kim. You disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree with that it's taught, but I disagree with the stop seeing color. That's one of those phrases that really get under my skin because I want you to see my color. I want you to see it and appreciate it. And the thing is, I think people get race and complexion confused. We are so many different complexions, and we should embrace it and appreciate all the hues and the colors. You know, don't say don't see color because then you're teaching people to pretend that they don't see what they really see.
Well,
And
let me ask you this
Yeah,
question,
maybe they
Kim. You said,
should change it.
I just want to ask because people have said that. Why do you want people to see your color?
because God has paint. That's God's paint. I mean, that's His paintbrush. And diversity is beautiful. And
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So if
Part
everybody
of-
agrees
part of
with that,
identity.
so do you feel the same way about you want them to see your color as you want them to see your eye color? You want them to acknowledge? Is you saying you want them to acknowledge your eye color? You want them to acknowledge your hair color? Is that what you're saying when you say I want them to see my skin color? Is that what you're saying?
If you were to draw a picture of me or paint a picture of me, I wouldn't want them to paint me really, really dark or paint me as a Caucasian person or paint me. I'd want them to paint me as the color that I am, because that's part of my identity. That's who I am. And it's nothing. In other words, if you paint me as something other than what I am, what you're saying is that I am not good enough as in the color that I am. Whether, you know, I just want to, I want you to not pretend that I'm not brown or that I'm not a caramel color or whatever, or, you know, whatever pecan or whatever color I am. Don't pretend that I'm not, because what that says is there's something not good about that.
Go ahead,
So-
Renita. Okay, Renita.
So maybe we should change the phraseology then. We should not say, because if the phrase, what I'm hearing is you don't like the phrase, don't look at color.
Or
Right.
don't see color.
Don't see color. Okay, and I agree with what you say. I agree what you're saying. So what phraseology would you recommend we use?
Maybe don't focus on color.
Don't judge color.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, we're all different colors, but we're all the same race.
Yes.
And with varying complexions and hues. We all have a
Seems like it's a question of
So-
priorities, right?
So
But
what
don't
Dr. King
prioritize color.
So when Dr. King talked about, and let's use his famous phrase that says, judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, that's an evaluation. He wasn't saying, though, as you're, I think, articulating, Kim, that you don't identify the skin color. What he's saying is, and skin color is subservient to the other features of people. And that's why people like Mr. Unruh is saying, it is, and I think, and let me ask you this, Kim, so you can answer, because I think whenever I've heard people, because they ridicule people who say color blindness, because they take that as being pejorative to that I don't see your color is minimized. And I don't think that's ever the intention of people who say, I want to be colorblind. I think their thing is, I want to be in the realm of people and know who you really are, because you're much more than your skin tone. You are much more than your hair texture. You're much more than all these things I see on the media about you. I want to know who you are. And so
Maybe
that
it's
is their
because
view,
that
Kim.
color blinds them to every other aspect of them.
So if that is their view, and do you see that could be their view, and what would you feel about that, Kim?
I don't want people to be colorblind. The key word is judge. Don't judge me
Judge the color.
by my color.
You don't want
Appreciate.
them to be color blind, but you don't want them to be blinded by them seeing color and focusing on color only, right?
Oh, yeah, because there's an extreme, and I give you a quick story. I had an officer come to me for to approve a report, and he left off the race of the suspect. And I said, well, I need the race of suspect. And he told me that the woman wouldn't give him her race because she said she didn't see color.
Oh, that must be my fault. Okay.
I'm taking the credit for that one.
And I said, well, it's going to be kind of hard, especially in police work. And I'm not saying, and I had to call the woman up, and I pretty much said the same thing. I'm not asking you to judge this person's color, but I do need the race of the person, your best guess of the race of the person. So it is a descriptive factor. I'm not judging him. I don't want you to think that I'm judging him like, oh, okay, I should have known. I'm just saying it is an important factor in certain circumstances. But I understand exactly what you're saying. We don't want to be judged by our color. But I do not want my color to be eliminated because it is who I am. I kind of like when I look in the mirror, when I'm shaving. I like my gray beard. You know what I'm saying? I earned this gray hair.
Can I jump in?
It's a good contrast.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Unruh.
Okay, so I think because I've dealt with so many different kiddos in my office for 19 years, when a person comes in my office, it doesn't matter what race they are. It's just like several people on this panel are African Americans. It's obvious to me that you're African American. That's my first thought, that you're an African American. But the second and the third and the fourth thoughts that I have nothing to do with the fact that you're an African American. I'm going to judge you by the content of what's coming out of your mouth now, and that's it. That's what I've learned.
That's true.
That's me. And the problem I have as a middle-aged white guy, it feels like everything in the world gets blamed on middle-aged white guys, and I'm a middle-aged white guy, and I feel like I get judged because I'm a middle-aged white guy.
Okay. Very good.
Okay,
Isabel.
Yes, I would love to take this conversation in a totally different direction, because I think we're talking a lot about judgment, and judgment only comes if we see an either or happening, and if that either or somehow serves us. We judge something because it somehow serves us in the way we feel about ourselves, in the way we see ourselves, in the way we experience our reputation. And so something that goes back to what David said. He said there are bad people and there are good people. There are no good people and there are no bad people. They're just people. And we're not innately bad. There is a lot of trauma that is related to how we act, to how we react, and how we respond, how we behave. There's a lot of history and a lot of, especially generational trauma carried further, that doesn't automatically make someone bad, but we're judging their behavior. What if we wouldn't judge anything and just evaluate and see how that relates to us in the broader perspective, why is this triggering us? Why do we think this is bad? And I think if we really want to create more of a unity mindset, we have to step away from the either or, bad or good, because that's what we have been doing for thousands of years with everything. If it's not in my category of good, then it must be in bad, and therefore we judge it.
Very good analysis. I really do like that. And so I'm going to segue that into one of the statements that Joseph made about the paradigm. Is it possible then, because I think all of the things that we're bringing up make it, or kind of either double down on the fact, if we talk about race, we can't see ourselves envisioning a world where color doesn't matter, where really, because, and I've heard several people say that that's my identity. Well, I mean, we get to choose what our identity is, don't we? I mean, and does the race paradigm force that identity on us because of what our history is in this country? Or have we decided we wanted to select that based on all the options available to us? And my view would be that I think our society forced that identity on us, and we feel like we can't get out of that identity and we're stuck with it. Any comments?
What do you mean identity?
Yeah, I
or
like what
just
Renita
culture?
had to say about.
Well, my skin color is important, and it's a very important thing. Why? Because it has to be, because the people oppressed me because of my history. My people were oppressed and they were treated negatively because of skin color. So I now have to overcome because of that. And so I have to fight this fight to maintain my sense of self-respect, dignity. And so I'm defending because I have been offended.
I think the question is, how does color matter? Like, for example, like I was saying, when you look at, if you switch the term race and change it to complexion, and you have a job application, and so someone asked you, what is your complexion on the application, you'd be like, well, what does that have to do with me getting the job? Whether or not I'm, maple versus, dark chocolate, or, or, high yellow versus, whatever. You'd be like, what does that, it could possibly happen? So the question is, how are you using it? And I think for me, I try to go to, I'm more, I celebrate heritage more than color. Color, though, like I said, don't think with me with color is, don't pretend it don't exist, because then you're saying, then you kind of negate me as being, relevant, because you're saying that because of the color that I am, then, that's not good. I need to be something else because I'm, so don't negate the color that I am, but take into account, how are you using that? Are you just using it? Are you just painting me because you think, because you want me to paint me as I am? Or are you using my color as a way to say I am good or bad? Are you using it to judge, or using it, how are you using it is the biggest question. To me, is the bigger question.
Well, and wouldn't the argument be, people think you shouldn't use it at all? I mean, think of, Isabel brought up the fact that, and she talked about what she encountered in Germany, and she talked about it was his skin color. They still had people that they didn't like, and they didn't separate because of skin color. Surely it was, it was an ideological difference for some reason. So is this fight over the skin color superficial? As you talk about how is it being used, why do we use it? I think is a big question. Why do we use it?
I think the skin color is superficial because, like Isabel said, I spent some time in Israel, Beirut, Golan Heights, that whole area. And I'm telling you, as far as differentiating an Israeli from someone from Beirut or Palestine, no, it doesn't happen. If you've ever been there, the only way I could tell it was the accent in the language and certain cultural things that separate them. Other than that, skin tone, complexion, no, not at all, not at all. So color, I think, is one of the main things, because it's something. It was like Ms. Unruh said, you can see color time it comes in the door. There's no way you don't see that. But like I said, as long as you're not judging me or making a prejudgment on what I should sound like, act like, be like, and subjugate me into a group based on that, I don't have a problem. Just don't do that. Just don't let that be the first thing and the only thing you look at. And then now I'm going to make every decision from now on based on the color of your skin. That's the problem.
Yeah, well said, my friend. That's phenomenal. And it reminds me of the idea of, because I pay very close attention, not as much to judge, just to kind of get a gauge for what, if someone is trapped within the us them construct. And so if we really pay attention to the words that we say, anytime that we get trapped into that us versus them, we got to keep in mind that we as human beings are tribal. And regardless of whether it's skin color or language or just cultural and how we operate as a tribe, as a community, because it's designed for survival and it's designed for protection, and it's deeply woven in with a lot of characteristics that are involved in fear. And so I think if we see it for what it is and realize if we are in that us versus them construct, or that race construct, I think we need to take the walls down a bit and just realize that when it comes down to it, we are human beings. We're in a society today where there's just all sorts of different ways of life and cultures that we've come from. But I think it's the us and them and the tribal piece.
Okay, I think we're going to be able to cover some more of this, but we're going to go on to round two. And so some of the points I'm sure will still come up, but they will get more cumulative as we go forward. And so in round two, our discussion is about, from a historical viewpoint, how we've come to where we are and how we see things now. And so it'll ask you to kind of listen to this history, a little bit of this history I'm going to give, and then talk about where we think we are in regards to that, okay? So with our history of slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, civil rights, and even the Black Lives Matter era, our country has always had these racial conflict and all these things. Since our inception, we've had this stuff. The practice of redlining really made it worse because the racial separation and segregation that is pervasive in much of our society today was fostered during the time after World War II, where they did have redlining and certain people couldn't get housing. And so large groups of African Americans, blacks, whatever you want to call them, were moved into the urban areas because they were only able to rent and they weren't able to own. And so you still see vestiges, and I'd say of that today, not that it's still alive, but you see vestiges of that because when they start talking about gentrification, they now want to upgrade these neighborhoods. And so they're moving the people who have come to those urban centers, moving them out because they don't have the ability to pay for that housing. And so you kind of still get some impact from that. And so the question we're going to ask is, we know that those things that have been done historically disadvantage dark-skinned people. What do you think are the impacts on that today, and how do we address those, or should we address those? How do we deal with that? Because those are some of the things that are still have lingering effects in our society today. What is the way to address those and bring about the unity that we want in our country? So any discussion?
Ooh, that's a lot.
Well, messaging matters, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with Nick Vujanovic, the guy, you just Google life without limbs. This guy doesn't have any arms or legs. He has a drumstick that he wobbles around on. And it shows what is possible when you don't focus on your limitations and you focus on whatever opportunities you could have. So even when you don't have any arms and don't have any legs, you can still be a very successful person. So look him up. That's the message that I would give. And I think it's very, very important to identify and destroy any kind of victim mindset that comes in. There's a great book called Mindset. It focuses on growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And the victim mindset is probably the foundation of every fixed mindset that there is. And with regard to like a Black Lives Matter era and a movement, convincing minorities that their lives matter, and then looking at the percentage of abortions and homicides that affect minorities is very that's the paradigm shift that I think is important in trying to address this problem. Because again, I think it's all in the mind for the most part.
So
Well,
when I walk into the bank and I go to get a loan and they say, I'm sorry. And then this other guy who's in a worse situation than I am because he's got different color skin goes in and gets that loan. Is that in my mind?
well,
No.
here's my
Well,
thought
it's
on
how
it.
you
Wait,
process it in
let
your
Adam,
mind,
let
right?
Adam address that.
Yeah, it's how you process it in your mind. Do you have an opportunity or do you have an obstacle? Is that something that is disadvantaging you, or is it making you work harder?
So if that's happening,
It's how you think about the.
right. So because I'm the American Unity guy, then I would say, but if that is something that if that continually happens to this person based on their skin color, this person based on their skin color, this person based on their skin color, and I change your mindset, we're still going to have these people over here in this group because of their skin color, and these people over here because of their skin color. And because I am saying, let's break those things down, you've got to break down things that are keeping us segregated. And that is a practice that is keeping us segregated. So my mindset can be great. But if I'm going to remain segregated, I can be segregated with a great mindset. And I think we've got a lot of that. HBCUs are probably doing better than they've ever done. I mean, you got some amazing schools.
I have a
Here at
solution
Prairie
for it,
View,
though,
this
Carla.
school is amazing.
If-
I call it the most beautiful campus in the country, Prairie View A&M, but it's an HBCU. And that's the reason I grew up there, but I didn't want to go there because I said the world is more diverse than that. So how do we got to achieve more than one objective. My mindset is one thing, but there's something else that needs to be affected. Go ahead, Joseph.
Well, to what Adam said, my question would be, you talked about the man that was born without arms and legs. You think his mindset would be different than someone who had arms and legs and had them cut off? So he doesn't see himself as a victim because that's him. But when you have your arms and legs cut off, as in not getting loans to buy houses, being denied being able to rent and buy in certain areas, you kind of will take on a kind of victim mentality because you have now become a victim by someone else's.
Well, a good example of that is
pain.
those who went to combat and had their arms and legs blown off.
Yes.
So, I mean, they have the same potential. So if you look at his backstory, actually, I think he attempted suicide at least once or twice. And so it's not like all of a sudden he's, totally focused on opportunity. Everybody goes through that process of confronting the shortcomings and overcoming them. And in the overcoming is what really makes the person better. So whether you're born that way or whether somebody else did that to you, the process is pretty similar of needing to overcome it.
But you can overcome if you're on an even playing field. What Carlin was talking about with redlining is when blacks and minorities were systematically denied the opportunities, not just by some guy at the bank. There were actually laws and stuff that were on the books that just, denied them the loans. The field was always being changed. The goalposts, as they say, kid move. You were denied, by being denied ownership of property, you were denying generational wealth, I feel, because we know that owning property generates wealth for the next generation. You buy a house, you hold on to that house, maybe you take a loan out and buy your kids a house. I'm a big opponent of that. I did that just 3 years ago. I sold my house in San Jose, I moved to Folsom, and I bought my daughter's homes because I wanted to generate generational wealth. I was not denied, so I think you might take on a victim's mentality. Is what do you do with that victim's mentality? You keep fighting, but you have to be realistic to the point that when we talk about redlining, this was a conspiracy that was to the highest level. Mm-hmm. in government, in banking, in the real estate industry. It was done purposely to do that very thing. And as far as gentrification, you have laws in certain states. I don't know if Texas has it. I know Georgia has it. So if you have a piece of property in Georgia and you improve your property, say you add an add-on or you do something, you build a nice home or something, everyone else's property taxes around you go up. Is that correct? Who's from Atlanta?
Kim?
That was me.
Okay, is that correct about the property taxes there? How about Texas?
No.
The gentrification.
Yes, that's because I have property in Pensacola, Florida, and I found that out because I'm from California. We have Prop 13. No matter what I do to my property right now, my neighbor's property taxes will be based on what he purchased his house 30 years ago. You know, just because I put a pool in my house and my property taxes go up, it doesn't affect my neighbors. Correct. But in other states, that does. And that was, like I said, a conspiracy to put people out of homes that they can no longer afford. And most of those people were Blacks and minorities.
And
because, go ahead.
Yeah, that's happening very prominently right now in Atlanta, quite a bit. That's, where exactly what you're saying is that they've come in and where, the neighborhood, it starts out really good because they make the neighborhood looks much nicer and cleaner and better, but then all the property taxes go up, and then the people who've been living there in those homes for 30 years now have to move because they can no longer afford the taxes, and they don't have a choice but to move out of their homes. They've been there for, most of their lives.
And
but
is that a race thing?
You know what?
I think I can address it. Let me address that. I've got a this is a booklet. It's called and it's talking about Waller County. Now, and as I traveled the country, I could find one of these books in every state and in every city, because I was going to large cities. I can find one of these books. Inside of that book, it's got a breakdown of areas of communities, and it identifies the median income. It identifies the ethnicity of people in it. Why do you think they create these? Why do people want to know what kind of people live in a particular area? I call this modern day redlining. And I think because they determine a lot of things based on this, because if you look in this one in Waller County, it shows where all the quote unquote Blacks live, and it shows where all the quote unquote whites live. And it looks like just a nice brochure, and it's covering these things. But why do you think they do that? They do that. Oh, okay.
I think I'm going to have to educate my ignorance, because Carlin, you know where I live. I live in a very nice area, a very nice subdivision. Both people on either side of me are Asian. The guy across the street's from El Salvador. People doors down are African Americans. I think there's more. My subdivision is a melting pot, and I don't see that, but I guess I need to educate myself on that.
I want to say something. So first, let me just say this. Race is imaginary, but racism is very real. But having said that, part of what you're talking about, Carlin, though, is not just racism, it's also classism. So, it's part of it is, not just, they're not looking just to see what color the people are in the neighborhood. They're looking to see, are they poor, or, that's part of it too. But I also want to kind of go back to something, I can't remember which young man said this, but anyway, he was talking about the victim part of it. So I agree that you should teach your children and teach people mind over matter, and teach them positivity and optimism, and teach them to overcome obstacles. And sometimes that makes you, adversity makes you stronger. But just like, for example, if someone robs your house, you can recover from that, true. But that doesn't still mean you're not a victim. And it doesn't mean there shouldn't still be laws against it. So that's the issue.
Okay.
It goes back to subconscious social programming. If you take a look at history, and if we really go more outside of the US as well, we already have classified in different labels people who are looking different than us when we talk about third world countries. People in Africa, apparently they're free guinea pigs for everything that you want to try as a white person, just so not you hurt yourself, but you hurt those who are lesser than you. It's always been that way, that there has been this social programming. And I don't know how this happened and when this happened, when the white race felt that we declare ourselves superior to everyone else who looks different to us. We've seen that what happens when the Spanish came over to the US. Oh, it doesn't matter if you own this country. If you don't look like us, it is not your country. We oppress you. It's just with the indigenous people. It's a survival programming that is very deeply ingrained in ourselves, where there is trauma within the white race that is holding on to that power. If I allow someone else who's not like me to move up to my level, will I lose what I have? And then there's this trauma within other races and different colors who have this fear of oppression. And most of the division that we're seeing is really an innate, deep down fear of, if I give into a different mindset, will I lose? And that is a mindset that is very deeply traumatic within ourselves, and most are not even aware of it. So for thousands of years, we have seen that throughout the whole world. I don't even like using the word third world countries, because that is an indication that they are not equally to me just because I live here. And the same you see in Europe. Europe is even a little different because, I mean, I grew up 30 minutes from Czech Republic, 4 hours from France. Like, everything is within 4 hours, and you don't even really worry about, like, you just already grow up that they are different. Yet there is this, and I think this is actually religiously based, that most Catholic, which was the main religion going up as a human race, has declared themselves as white, and that is what we're following. So it goes that far back, the social construct, the deep social programming that keeps us divided today. So really talking about race as, okay, what do we need to fix, is a very surface level discussion. Mm-hmm. If we really want to make a difference, we have to understand that there's some social programming with certain subtle intentions and motivations connected to this that need to be broken off. If you look at people in power, most of them are white, and they would do whatever they have to do to stay within that power so that they do not lose their identity as powerful. And that is where we really have to look at even much deeper than just the general conversation about what do we have to change on a surface level.
Let me ask you this, Isabel. Oh, go ahead, Renita.
Drop the mic on that one. Boom.
I want to go back a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam. When we were talking about the bank scenario that Carlin brought up, and we were saying how he would go in and get denied, and a white person would go in and get approved. If I'm remembering correctly, you said something to the effect of, okay, so we just got to try harder. We'll go back and try harder. But that's the problem that we're having in our culture as a whole anyway. We have to work twice as hard to get half as much. Why? And the Carlin went in the bank, and dude got 6 figures in his bank account, but the other guy that walked in could just barely make it $20,000 a year. Why would he get it as opposed to Carlin? And why should Carlin have to fight harder to prove himself?
So from what I understand, the banks will give a loan based on somebody's income, based on their credit score, based on their, so I have never heard of somebody not getting a loan in the year 2020 because of the color of their skin or their perceived complexion based on all this. So I don't know if that's like a straw man's argument or red herring, or where we're going with that. And if it happens, then I would suggest that there's a separate bank right across the ways that most likely would not base the loan on the color of the skin. And if it did, then I would suggest that probably 80% of the people apply for loans via the internet, and the internet can't see what your complexion is, and it just looks at your income. And I've failed to get a loan because my credit score was too low, and I wasn't discriminated against because of whatever the perceived complexion was. It was my credit score was too low. So
I was just using it as a scenario, as a general scenario.
Yeah.
So Adam,
But he does
I think
provide an
I think
opportunity to
Carlin
work
had
harder,
said
which makes you stronger.
this had happened in the past, but I think Carlin's last part was, how do you feel this might have impacted or still impacts the minority communities that they were subjugated to this in the past? I don't think he said it's happening now.
No, exactly.
But I think it does have a long-term effect. And like I pointed out, I think the long-term effect is that if you look back in the 50s and 60s, because the Fair Housing Act was, I think, brought in 1968, I believe. It was done in 1968. The Fair Housing Act was signed. So if you go back prior to 1968 and you look at that generation from the 50s on up to there that were denied being able to buy property and therefore establish that wealth, that generational wealth that other groups were allowed to do based on ownership of property, I think the impact is still in effect. I think it's in effect because of what we subconsciously, like Isabel said, what we subconsciously pass down to the next generation. You're not going to get that loan because I didn't get one in 1971 or whatever. You're not going to get one. We have to stop that too as a culture. We have to stop saying, that's not going to work for you because it didn't work in 1958. Well, it's not 1958 anymore. That's not going to work for you because no. Let's move on. I'm not saying forget, but I'm saying stop. Don't attach yourself. I call them soul ties. Imagine a clamp around your ankle with a rubber band on it that you can move so far out, and you're there, but bam, that soul tie snaps you back. We have to cut these soul ties. We know what happened, and we have to. I'm probably getting ahead of you, Carla, so I'll stop there. But we're going to talk about how to fix it. So I'll wait.
Let me ask Joseph something.
Yeah.
You have property in California.
Yes.
And you have property in Florida.
Yes.
So obviously you had to get loans to start the being able to get to acquire these properties at first, right?
Well, so the one in Florida
did you experience this type of prejudice?
No, because my wife and I purchased our first home in 1980. I want to say 86. Yeah, because I was already in the police. I'd been in the police department about 5 years. So we were already in the police department. And but prior, we saved up, put it down, and got the house loan. Now, the property in Florida that I spoke of has been in my family since the Reconstruction, just about. I mean, I had the original deed that it was like it was after Reconstruction, it was about 1887. So this is property that's been in my family. Now, again, even with that property, blacks were only allowed to buy property on certain parts of the city. And that was the one part, so my family bought property there and it stayed in the family. But here in California, and again, like Adam said, I've never had a loan denied because of my color. And I've gone in and signed the papers. I even joked one time with a loan officer, not a loan officer, the closing person at the title company, because they show you your credit scores. And my wife's was higher than mine, right? Yet I always had the higher paying job. I always had all this stuff. And so I'm thinking, and women goes, yeah, well, sometimes that happens. I said, well, yeah. I said, oh, I know why it is. It's because I'm black. And I'm joking with her now, right? Oh, the poor woman, she almost had a heart attack, because my wife's Puerto Rican, so I'm going like, I said, I'm just joking. I know, because I know how the credit thing and the whole banking scheme goes. You have to be in debt to get money. If you're not in debt, you have no credit cards and you have everything paid off, your credit score will actually go down. So
yeah.
All right.
I have something I want to. Oh, go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
This is really great, and I find myself here. I'm happy, and then I get depressed. I don't know why.
That's life, Daryl.
Exactly. the reality is, so Adam, look up redlining, because I think in today it's more likely that we will get along than back then, but that's neither here nor there. But because we couldn't get it back there generationally or as a nation, or as a people, it's trickled down now to where the disparity is just so great between haves and have-nots. But when Carla and I talk about this thing, like I said, my mindset he's changed it a little bit. But the fact is, the reality is how society has programmed us. We're at odds, or there's that division. There's that white, black, whatever you want to call it. And so we have to deal with it now. And I think the first thing we have to deal with, at least maybe on both sides, is to understand how we got here. You know, I mean, because some folks will say, and David, you kind of alluded to it, that, you know, you're a 58-year-old white man and you get blamed for everything, right? You weren't here in 18 or 17, or even before that. So
were you? He might have been. Dave, were you here, Mr.
No, he was only 58. So it wasn't you personally, but it was people who looked like you. If you just give me that term.
Yes.
And so because of that, oh man, I'm 61, so I just lost my thought. But
well, I can
so basically, the reality is, how do we get from here to there? I like what Isabel said, and this is my thing with Carlin. For 400 years, the African American people went through what we went through as far as being enslaved and everything else, and never got any psychological help for the trauma. And then that's why Joseph said we continue to pass the thing on, and we got this crabs in a barrel mentality sometimes among us. And so we have to deal with that, but we have to deal with reality. And like I was telling Carlin just last Saturday, he's in this place of utopia. He's there where this is a colorless society, so to speak. We're judged by the content of our character versus how we look. I'm not there. And I want to get there. And I have, I'm going to say this is what folks say, I have a lot of white friends. You know what I mean? But and it's frustrating because, and so this is I know I'm rambling. So I'm a child of God, right? And again, Isabel she said, it's not just a mind change, but a heart change. I think if people's hearts change to where we just love, it wouldn't matter about the color of our skin, you know, if we just loved. And so my thing, where I told Carlin, bruh, you gotta push Christ. It's like, you know, but he said, you know, not everybody believes. And I get that. So I don't know where we go. And you know, Carlin talked about co-conspirators with this interview he had with, or debate he had with Tracy. And we'll need people in power who recognize, and I think this COVID-19 is at least showing the disparities in the health capacities or abilities to get good, proper health care among the different communities, and hopefully something will come of that. But it's just the reality here. And while I'm not, there's always hope. There's always hope. But the reality is, it's going to take more than just 9 folks here. And
definitely.
And I mean, it's a start. I'm not hopeless. And I don't mean to bring everybody down, but man,
all right, Kim.
No, it didn't bring us down, because I agree with what you said. We have to look back to, okay, where did this divide happen? Where did it start that we started to look at each other in different aspects of the way we look at each other? I think if we can find, like Isabel said, if we can get back to that root and see where it happened in our heart, where it happened in the world, where did it happen with the colonizers, the Portuguese and the Spanish and the Anglo-Europeans that went out and colonized?
Okay, so we go back and look at that. We go back and look.
Mentality.
We go back and look at that, as Isabel said. What do? I mean, we know when it happened. Okay,
yeah.
Well,
it happened.
Go ahead, Kim.
I think we have to address it from a systemic perspective, but I kind of want to address and I think Adam was saying that, if the bank is discriminating against you, then you go across the street to another bank. Well, I agree. That's what you would do if you know you're being discriminated against. A lot of times you don't, it's so systemic, you don't recognize it. I'm looking at an article. They talk about banking. They're talking about the various different racialized patterns and exclusionary practices by banking. Because somebody was saying, that's not really happening today. It's happening very much today. These practices also create banking deserts in which payday lenders, check cashers, and other non-bank services thrive, thereby implicating banks and facilitating a market dynamic whereby the financial services environments in communities of color are dramatically different in terms of quality and expense from those in white communities. And there's several lawsuits. Man, there was a big, huge lawsuit that Wells Fargo just lost in 2017 for discriminated against. So it's not a yesterday thing. It is a today thing. But then on the other hand, like I said, I'm one of those people who kind of go flop back and forth. But I think that the issue is the affluent versus the disadvantaged. But I don't want African American or my Blackness or my heritage to be synonymous with disadvantage. So it's just kind of a catch-22, because I don't want, I want equality, and I want there to be things systemically in place to prohibit discrimination against me, but I don't want people to look at me and go automatically, as soon as they see me, the first thing they think is she's disadvantaged. And I don't want to grow up, I don't want my children to grow up with the mentality that they are disadvantaged, but it's hard to escape that when the disadvantages are real.
Well, let's stick with that conspiracy of this sort. Think about how wording is done when stuff is reported with the news. When, say, like a largely African-American community or county in Georgia, it has a high rate of welfare recipients. That's what they say on the news. But if you see a predominantly under poverty-stricken area in, just say, Southern Illinois or Indiana or in West Virginia that's predominantly Caucasian, that community is getting subsidies. So you see the difference between those two words? So you're right about how sometimes we're portrayed in a negative way. Blacks get welfare, whites get subsidies. Two different words that mean the exact same thing, but which one has a negative connotation to it?
Okay, and let me draw this all together, because what if everything that everyone has said here in the last 15, 20 minutes, what if it's all true? What does that mean? Because what if what Adam and Mr. Unruh said, and what Isabel and Daryl said, and Joseph, what if that's all true? What if every single one of those viewpoints is true, which I guarantee you it is? Mr. Unruh lives in a community that is very diverse. Adam has never been discriminated against for getting a loan. These disparities that exist are actually happening. And so that's where we arrive at. And the things that Isabel was talking about, that people don't want to give up power, that's true. And my contention in all of this, as we talk about it, and I'll go to our next round of questioning, my contention is that all of this comes from the race concept. All those things being true, they emanate from the fact that only reason some people want to maintain power is because race, the construct, creates a hierarchy. And it says this person's at the top, this person's at the bottom. The only reason people do that and try to keep people segregated when they go and look up the housing stats, whatever, they do that because somebody says, well, make sure I don't want to live in a community with people that are this way. And like Isabel was saying, it's not just race, it's a class thing.
Yeah.
It's a class thing.
And I think it goes back to how we define success, especially in today's society. What defines someone as being successful that we actually fight for?
Yeah.
Well, so, it was like a paper I helped my wife write for economic class, and it was called The Lie of the Pie. You have a pie, and you cut the pie in different sections. So if I get 40%, is Isabel, how much does that leave you?
60.
60. So you have more than me.
Yeah.
So we have this construct of that pie has a finite number or
Yeah.
space, which that's a lie.
It's not true.
Just because I have 50%, you could have 50. I could have 80, and you could have 80. The sharing of resources and wealth does not end at the rim of that pie pan.
Right.
But that's the concept that people have embraced since forever. I have to have more than you, whether it's based on race, class, ethnicity, color of skin, whatever. We have this kind of mentality of, I have to have more. Now, I could, like you said, like Colin said, you move into a neighborhood and you look at it and you say, well, I want to live in this neighborhood. It may not be because of the race. It may be because I'm not going to get the return on my investment in that neighborhood because of this is here or they're there or whatever it is, because they recognize the concept of loans don't always get loaned to people in those neighborhoods, or the price of those homes don't go up because nobody wants to get them, or realtors set the price. Who knows what it is? But you talk about the Wells Fargo and the banking, getting back to that real quick. If you go in lower income neighborhoods, I'm not even going to go with color, just any lower income neighborhood, you see more check cashing places than you see banks. Why? Because check cashing places charge you 15 to 20% to cash your check. You know, why don't B of A or Wells Fargo or somebody have banks in those communities? Because they don't want to have the money that your little $200 a month or your $300 you're saving up for. They want thousands and thousands of dollars. That's why they charge people service to keep money in the bank. How you gonna charge me to keep my money in your bank? And it only charges people that have money under a certain amount.
Well, doesn't that go back to the, in the inner city, people they're not going in to buy properties. You know, in the inner cities, what we've done is concentrated these people who are not owning, they're renting, and they're not going in saying, hey, I want to buy 10 acres of land. So the banks don't want to see them. They're not going in saying, I want to open up a business. They don't want to see them. So they have payday loan places where, I can make money off of you. And so they have consumer mentality in the inner city.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with this a final question. I think that'll allow us to bring all this in, and as we talk about it, because it's one of the most contentious issues in our day, and that is the concept of white privilege. Okay, so you can begin talking about, in fact, does it exist, how it exists, how it's manifested, where it comes from, what its effects are, and what you think about it, and everybody can weigh in with their particular views. And I won't begin it. I will let someone else begin. We're going to talk about the concept of white privilege. And I think we probably have alluded to some of that in some of our other discussions. So think about all those things and bring in anything else you want to. This will be our last item, so I'll give time for everybody to get their viewpoints in, and we can talk about it.
Can I start off and get very controversial?
Yes, you
Please.
Yes, you may.
So
that's the best way to start.
Okay, good. So on that note, I hear a lot of conversations, and it's included within this group right here, but a lot more outside of this group, is the idea of we and our people, our community, us, them. Can we challenge ourselves to
to disappear? Can we challenge ourselves to disappear? Whoa, I guess you might have said the wrong thing. Somebody said, let's nix that.
I can do that.
Yeah. Well, I like what he was saying though. Let's wait on him to come back in.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody can go ahead. We'll cut you off though when he comes back in.
So your question is, we're talking about white privilege?
Yeah. What is your view? Does it exist? It does exist. What is it? How does it manifest itself?
I'd like to know if my brothers and sister of a lighter complexion, do you believe in white privilege? Do you think it exists?
I don't know if I believe in white privilege, but I can acknowledge it. And here's why: because no matter where I'm at, no matter what color I have, It depends on your circumstances. Like for me, I'm an immigrant, and immigrant in this country is below color. You don't get anything, even though people think that's not true. You don't get anything. But I'm not using that card, you know. So I think I can acknowledge that because of my color. Maybe police might react differently to me. And I think that gives me the responsibility to call out certain things. Like when I see my Black brother and sister being judged in a way that is just not appropriate, that does not align with an understanding of oneness and connection, I have the responsibility to say something, even if that might mean I put myself in a hot spot. Mm-hmm. I just asked my husband, I'm someone who just, I have no shame. Like I just literally say whatever I think out loud. Even I might do that in German, just cause a little in German. Usually gets people to stop. But anyways, so I think I don't believe in the concept of white privilege, but I can acknowledge it. That makes it different, because when I acknowledge it, I don't own it, but I can take responsibility.
I'd like to weigh in for Daryl. I personally don't think I've experienced white privilege. I came from a lower middle income background, and I feel like I've had to fight and claw and scratch for everything I've ever gotten in my life. I would hope that if I guess that concept does exist, I'd hope that if it is prevalent, it's getting better. To me, it seems like if you are a Caucasian male in the United States of America today, you have a harder time getting a job because most corporations, in my opinion, are looking to enhance diversity in their corporations. So that would be my take. For
okay, let me ask the dark-skinned people. Do you all agree with that last statement he just made? Can you answer that? And we'll go to you, Kim, as soon as I get some answers from dark-skinned people on that. What do you think about what he just said? That they have a hard time because everybody's trying to diversify, and so they're kind of getting what some people would call reverse racism, if that exists. What do you think about that? Anybody want to say? Do you think that happens?
Sure, it happens. But what I wanted to say is that hardship is not the opposite of privilege. Yes, we all experience hardships. That's true. You know, white people or ivory people, you know, whatever complexion, people of all complexions experience hardship. But privilege occurs depending upon the environment. Privilege flourishes in an unfair environment. So, for example, a person with ivory skin over in Sweden probably would not experience any greater privilege than the others there. But in a racist society like America, then there are, you know, that's when privilege comes into play, because there are some things that you will benefit from that a person of a darker skin complexion would not. And also there's some harsh, like for example, I mean, when you just look at the studies and look at the disparities, when you look at the amount of times police officers stop people in their cars, you know, the darker complected persons get stopped more frequently. They also get shot more frequently. Like I said, the health outcomes, there's just so many, you know, so many different disparities that depending upon your complexion, you experience less of or benefit more from, because it depends on the environment.
Let me give you a quick example. I think recently, this week in Michigan, when they were protesting the lockdown, you know, everybody wanted to go out and everything else. And you see all these guys with their rifles, I mean, hunting rifles and I guess legal carry, but you see all these guys sitting on the state capitol steps protesting, right? All of them of white complexion. Had that been Black men of dark complexion with those rifles, oh no, that wouldn't have happened. They'd have gotten moved out of there real quickly. I would not be surprised if a couple of them didn't get shot. I'm only saying that based on what I've seen and what just the reality of today. you know? And so in that case, that would be an example of white privilege.
Well, it would even be we can go back, not even today, Daryl. We go back to 1968 Oakland, where California had the law where open carry was fine, you know. And when the Black Panthers started carrying openly,
it was a problem.
That was the one and only time the NRA supported gun control. The one and only time the NRA has ever lobbied for gun control was 1968-69 for open carry. So people, I tell people, look, you want to get gun control laws in the United States? Have 2 million black guys apply to get guns.
Yeah, you're right.
Shut it down.
Okay, Renita.
I was looking at a clip today where a lady was being pulled over by the police, and she had the tail end of her truck was just totally jacked up. And he was saying, okay, I'm giving you a ticket. You need to get this taken care of. You can go to court once it's fit. If you get it fixed before court, you don't have to pay anything. We just need you to get it fixed. She said, okay. He said, okay, I need you to sign for the ticket. She refused to sign for the ticket. He said, ma'am, you have to sign for the ticket. She said, no, I'm going to get it fixed. So why should I get a ticket? You should just give me a warning. She refused to sign for the ticket. He said, well, ma'am, now I'm going to have to ask you to get out the car. She refused to get out the car. So she rolls her window up. He knocks on the window. She still refuses. And on top of that, punched the gas and drove off.
Oh.
He follows behind her, calls for help. The people surround her. He finally gets her out of the car. He pulls a stun gun and he takes her down with a stun gun. She rolls and tosses and tumbles. And he says, ma'am, please just be still. Just be still. Ma'am, will you please just be still?
It's kind of hard with 5,000 votes going through you.
Right. But my whole point is, had that been me in that car and said I wasn't going to sign it, y'all be looking at my funeral right now. Had it been me that punched the gas and just drove off away from the police, do you think I would have gotten the same liberty? And then when they finally handcuffed her, ma'am, are you okay? Do you need a hospital? Did I hurt you? Yeah, you hurt me, you stunned me. Well, that was because you wouldn't listen to what I was telling you to do.
Okay, so if all those things you're saying are true, what is the cause? I mean, do we have a root cause?
Fear.
It's just fear.
Fear.
Everybody, like I think it's kind of like what Isabel was saying before, that if somebody gains something, then it makes me think I'm going to lose something.
Right.
Okay, so
either or mindset.
So what's the solution for, if it is in fact this fear? What is the solution for that? Do we have one?
It's kind of like David's experience, because before he went to college and played football and had relationships with these people that didn't look like him, his mindset was, you know, what the negative stuff that the media showed him. So I think in these communities of power, or maybe police communities, I'm not sure how you want to call it, there's no relationship, or there's this assumption that, you know, this person of a darker hue is going to turn on me, is going to kill. There's a fear, and it's just bred out of ignorance. And so the solution to have more of these among, as far as police goes, I think the training needs to be upgraded a great deal.
Well, can I speak to that?
Yes, you can.
Fear of a false sense of superiority too.
I could speak on the expert level of this. I agree with what you said, Daryl. Training has to be improved, but also the quality of recruit has to be improved. What I've seen before I left, and I've been out now 7 years, like I said, I was at the academy and I trained quite a few officers. I trained about 15 academy classes while I was there. And what I kept seeing was this next generation of people coming in are internet, Facebook, Snapchat, everything on any medium is their belief. It's their God. They worship it. So when they come in with this concept it was like Dave said, you know, you come in and you have this idea of what African Americans are like. You have this inherent kind of fear, you know, and you react differently. You're ignorant in fear. I don't think it's malice or hate. They just have been told repeatedly in one form or another that all the Mexicans you come in contact with work for the Sinaloa drug cartel, and they're all drug mules. All the blacks are going to be inherently more violent. They're going to be carrying guns, you know, and you're told this. Now, the shame about this is about 5 years ago, you might have saw, you know, incident here and there, but I saw a real increase in these incidents about 3 to 4 years ago. They just start to increase, and they start to increase even more, and they start to increase even more.
All right, let's hurry up on this, Joseph. We want to cover some more angles on this, so let's go.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, you have to look at where's the root cause when you have the president of the United States that's making speeches selling these very things to crowds of hordes of people. It's going to trickle down into society. So any change that we're going to do about any of this has to be from 2 points of view. It has to be from the ground root like us. We have to recognize that there are powers that be that want to keep us divided by race so that their power structure stays in place. Let them fight amongst themselves so we can do what we want to do up here. So we have to recognize that. That's where the change is going to happen. Change is going to happen with the 9 of us talking to 9 more people and 9 more people and 9 more people. And we have to be aware of that.
But there's that issue, and we talk about privilege of the power structure, but what if there are a bunch of people who happen to be in places of occupation and they were like David Unruh grew up with and had just had no exposure?
Yeah.
Could it just be ignorance? I mean, because when we assert this other thing about they just don't want to give up something, could it be simply ignorance?
Fear.
I don't know when you get to that level. I'm really hard to press to say yes. When you get to that level of politics, when you get past the mayoral and senators and governors, no, you know exactly, you know how to play that game. You're going to say what you need to say to certain constituents to get what you want.
I think.
You know, you're going to say what you need to say.
Go, Kim.
I still think fear is the root cause. Like, for example, in David's situation, it was fear of the unknown. You know, it wasn't, you know, like he didn't know what Black people were, you know, he didn't know whether or not what people were saying about them were true or not. You know, when you're talking about the ignorance, you're saying, you know, maybe he just there weren't any in his environment. So, you know.
Well, yeah, David, I don't think, David wouldn't say he had fear. He might have said he was just unaware, but he didn't have fear.
If I can weigh in just a little bit, I do think Kim has a point there, because I went into these situations with an open mind to learn and to respect everybody. But, you know, there was a couple rednecks on the team that didn't have an open mind. And I think it does have to deal with fear sometimes. So I would agree with that.
Can I say something about that? I know we're talking a lot about fear. Anson's emotion is what I've been studying and teaching. Fear is actually often just what we identify as. Usually we don't actually experience fear. There's something much more deeper below that, and that is grief. And grief is considered the river of the soul, meaning it is cleansing. It is moving us through letting go of things that we have held on to, things that we have created an identity around that has become an ideology. And so we're not always just experiencing fear, but it's the easiest to identify within the social construct, as the same way as we have created emotions, we have just put them in a construct when they're actually spiritual and leading us to our spiritual self. So what is usually the root cause of what we identify as fear is grief. The fear, we don't even have a fear of the unknown. We are grieving what we would have to let go of, that we have been creating as our identity if we were to step into that different picture. So I think that's something, I know people love to throw around fear, but there's something much deeper beyond, that goes deeper beyond fear. Fear is just the obvious that shows up.
But
The one-
Isabel,
I think there's another root
Oh, yeah.
too, which is anger. I think anger is a root of fear in a lot of ways too.
Anger,
And,
anger is about boundaries. If someone is not respecting your boundaries, or you are not even aware of your own boundaries, anger is when you're not taking care of yourself, when you feel in some way violated.
But
That
what
is
about-
the meaning of anger.
Can I weigh in just for a second here? I think there's a couple other things that we haven't even talked about. Doesn't matter if it's Renita, Isabel, Adam, Daryl, Kim, Joe, any of y'all. Every human being wants to be respected. Every human being wants dignity. And one thing I learned as an assistant principal in my job, didn't matter who I approached in the hallway, as long as I approached them with dignity and respect, then I got dignity and respect back. So I think that needs to be intertwined in our conversation also.
Mhm.
yeah, there's a crazy cycle when somebody acts disrespectful, the other person responds in anger or unlove or fear, and then that causes them to be even more disrespectful. And so that's the crazy cycle of love and respect. Can I say a couple of things about the solution, Carlin? Because you were asking, hey, what's the solution to this fear? I just wanted to encourage all of us and myself to be careful of what confirms my bias and embrace concepts that challenge my beliefs. I think if we all are very careful about those things that would be like confirmation bias,
Yes.
then
Yes.
we may not make certain arguments of silence. Because I heard two arguments of silence. One was, if that was me running away from the cops, then you guys would be at my funeral. And then the other one was, if it was a black man that had a gun on the Capitol steps, then there would have been shot or they would be in jail. And so a lot of times, I'm not arguing those points. I mean, they could have happened, but they could maybe not have happened too. So it's just being careful about certain ways we articulate, certain ways that we think about things. And I'll close with this because it relates to what we're going through right now with this virus that's going around. In a few months, some people are going to have their bias that this lockdown was too strict. They're going to have that bias confirmed by saying, hey, look, only so many people died. And then other people who have a bias of, yeah, it's a good thing we locked down, are going to have that bias confirmed by saying, yeah, we would have lost even more people. And it's a good thing because we only lost this many people.
We
And
only
so
lost.
you can see how certain biases are confirmed. And so we just have to be very, very careful about those preconceived bias and welcome things that challenge our beliefs. One more thing, I just watched a Prager University video about the Civil War, and it said how it was all about slavery. Coming from the South, being from Texas, one of the things that we're taught back and forth is, well, it was more about states' rights than it was about slavery. Well, this Prager University video and the book that I just listened to, The Battle Cry for Freedom, totally demolishes that argument that it was all about states' rights. And it reinforces that it really was all about slavery, taking quotes, taking things, taking legislation, and proving that the Civil War was at its core all about slavery. And that challenged my preconceived notion, and I am embracing it. So, for what it's worth.
Going back to your example about the bias, whether or not it was good or best or not best to be locked in, I think you have some data that if you look at New York versus California, it's just totally different how it's been handled. There's plenty of hospitals and plenty of hospital beds and less deaths here. Not minimizing the deaths, but versus New York, it blew up. So they handled it differently. And so, when I make the example about the black men versus white men on Michigan steps, that's from data too, as we've talked about. And I'm not going to go with the 85%, Carl. Don't even go there. Don't even go to the 85%. We see law enforcement lately routinely killing men of color, black and brown men of color. Okay, so that's the reality. That's the data I've taken in now. Okay, I see that. Okay, I have to behave this way, and even sometimes when I behave pristine, obeying, just yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Sometimes even that doesn't matter. So I understand your point. I do understand your point. We all have our biases, implicit, all that. But a lot of these biases are backed by some real-time data that we can't ignore. and we have to either adjust our behavior or our mindset, whatever. But this is real stuff that's happening, and to dismiss it, I think, is dangerous.
Well, it's not dismissing though, but if you look at parts of the data and you concentrate on the truth of that data and ignore the overwhelming parts of the other data that tells the other part of the story, you got to question that. Don't you have to question that? If I got 100% and I got 15% of people dying this way, and I'm really saying, you know, wow, this is really bad, and I do that and ignore the 85%, if I am having conversations with my children about these 15% likelihood of dying, and I ignore the 85%, it doesn't, I mean, I just can't ever make sense of that. How do you do that?
Not ignoring the 85%.
Well, what I'm saying is, but if you make the 85 subservient to the 15, that's what I call cultural apartheid.
No, because we're talking context now. We're talking context. Okay, we're talking context, dealing with this group of people and this group of people. There comes the race. Let me finish. Let me finish. This group of people is supposed to protect you, right? These are the group of people I need to run. I got this 85% trying to get me. I need to run to this group of people who's supposed to protect me, yet I can't because I'm fearing, based on the data I've seen, the things that I've seen, when people are standing up, sitting down, complying, whatever, they're still dying. So I don't know which way to go. You know what I mean?
Well,
but I didn't want to digress there, but I just want to throw that out there because
let me ask Daryl something
based on experience.
Let me ask Daryl something, and maybe you can educate me because I don't know. Is there any data that shows police officers in different parts of the United States of America, real hard data? And I'm not speaking from, I don't have any kind of, I don't know. Is there any data that suggests that if you're a person of color, you have more of a preponderance to use a gun than somebody that is not a person of color?
I don't know. I don't have that data.
Ask Joseph. Let Joseph, you know.
Well,
I have no idea.
The FBI keeps data on all those. It is not more likely than anybody else to have a weapon. I think a lot of I call it ghost data. You know, you arrest one black guy with a gun, and the story goes around, and now everybody starts thinking, not everybody, majority of people start thinking that every black guy is going to have a gun. You know, and then that just keeps multiplying and multiplying. I would like to see the hard data also. I don't think there's going to be a very big disparity of arrests made on African Americans against any other group that's going to prove that it's going to be higher that they're going to have guns.
See, Kim, good people and bad people.
That's it. You know,
I
when I taught that class, I would always say that I've been to San Quentin, I've been to Folsom Prison, and guess what? I've seen every race, creed, color, religion, and everything under the sun in that prison. So,
and we don't have time to talk about it on this show, but because the next thing I would interject in there would be, have you ever heard the media report a black officer killed a white teenager? Have you ever heard a report like that?
Getting back to what I said,
never
about the media.
ever heard that. Why have you never heard that? You think it's never happened? I guarantee it's happened. You know why you never heard it? Because the media, it doesn't fit the narrative.
All right,
it doesn't fit the narrative that someone wants to create.
I want to read some specific data. This is the data's out there if you really want to look it up.
Yeah.
Research. I'm getting ready to read some right now, but and I'll tell you where it's from. This is from, it's called DoSomething.org, but you can go check it out. But let's see. In New York City, 88% of police stops in 2018 involved Black and Latinas people, while 10% involved white people.
Where in New York?
Where?
Of those stops, 70% were completely innocent. Another point was From 2013 to 2017, white patients in the United States received better quality health care than about 34% of Hispanic patients, 40% of Black patients, and 40% of Native American patients. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience a pregnancy-related death than white women, even at similar levels of income and education. Black Americans are more likely than white Americans to be arrested. Once arrested, they are more likely to be convicted, and once convicted, they are more likely to experience lengthy prison sentences. Black Americans and white Americans use drugs at similar rates, but Black Americans are 6 times more likely to be arrested for it. On average, Black men in the United States receive sentences that are 19.1% longer than those of white men convicted for the same crimes. In the United States, Black individuals are twice as likely to be unemployed than white individuals. Once employed, Black individuals earn nearly 25% less than their whiter counterparts. And I'm not, there's more, but you can, but you get the point.
Can I interject on something
wait,
right there,
hold
Carly?
on. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, David.
Okay, because I've been wanting to say this for an hour and a half. Should we, as United States of America, invest more commerce in impoverished areas, invest in more in jobs in impoverished areas, and invest more in education in impoverished areas? Would that be a solution?
That would help.
Well, if you looked at it from a economic point of view, if you invest $100,000 into a community to educate kids from the 3rd grade through the 6th grade in math and science and reading, and their scores go up, they have a 70% chance better of being in high school and getting a job. Without that, they have a higher percentage of getting arrested, getting into the juvenile system, and then continuing on that pipeline to prison, where it costs on an average of $250,000 to $300,000 a year to house a prisoner. So if you just look at it just from economics, you don't have to be a liberal, a conservative, or Republican or Democrat. That's a good investment. If I could better the country by just educating all the kids, I'm going to go back to the class. I'm going to go back to the economic disparity of America, the have and the have-nots. If you educate and you eliminate that pipeline. Now, the pipeline is much bigger for minority kids than it is for non-minority kids. But if you can eliminate the pipeline to prison, you save money, you save lives, you have more jobs, you have more productivity. But it still comes back to the have and have-nots. Everybody talks about Getty and how he was a champion of the education system and school boards, everything like that. And then his private memos come out that says that, yeah, I was all for educating. I wanted them just smart enough so they could work in my factories. I didn't want them smart enough to go to Harvard with my kids, So there's always that underline of someone, like you said, like David said, there's always some evil person that's in there. It's a bad person no matter what their color is, But that's the solution to that, Now, statistics, I look at statistics, but I always want to peel the onion a little bit further down. My economics teacher said there are 2 types of lies: the white lie, the big lie, and statistics. Because you can ask a question a certain way and get whatever answer you want to from statistics. True. I had to stand up at a community meeting one time and talk about statistics. Dale, there's the Bayview Hunters Point area, right? Predominantly African American.
Yes.
Up until about 15 years ago, and it became predominantly Asian. But the amount of traffic stops that were being done out there, it was like 82% of the traffic stops were being perpetrated or on African-American kids between this age group, 18 and 25, right? And so the community was in an uproar about that. How can it be when they only make up 12% of the community and this and that and that? And I said, that's a good question. I knew this question was coming. So I did my own little survey, and I found out that only 3% of the Asians drove cars. So there's the statistics. If you looked at it just on those numbers, you'd say, oh my God, they're targeting African-American teenagers.
Right.
They made up 89% of the drivers in the Asian Americans took public transportation.
Yeah.
So I'm not dismissing these statistics, just when they deal with someone's lives. Someone died. That's all that matters to me. I'm a child of God too. I don't care what the circumstance was, that person should not have died. I don't wish death on anyone. But
Okay.
I
Great.
don't want to look at the statistics.
Okay. Hey, we're gonna go. Everybody's gonna get their closing remarks here. All right. So prepare your speeches. This is like the big presidential debate. This is your closing remarks. You got to get the votes. All right. No, we're not going for the votes here. I just want to thank you all for the great information, because I tell you, regardless of what we said here, the answer is in what we did here.
Yeah.
This is it. I mean, and because my whole issue has been, if I simply bring those people to the table, look, I know every one of you. I think quite well. And that's why I would bring you here, because I know that you're part of the solution. And I said, all of you, regardless of, and I probably have argued with everybody here, but I mean, and that's one of my strong points is I've argued with everybody here, but they're so valuable. That's the way we get at the solution, because it's not what I have and it's not what you have. It's what we have. And so I push very big, because I think at the end of the day, and you all can give us your summations, I'm giving mine now, but at the end of the day, the solution comes from integration. And when I say integration, I mean integration. What Mr. Unruh was talking about in his community, what you've experienced, when you found that when you made a connection, as Isabel talks about, when you make a connection, that level of integration is what solves the problem. Because then all the stereotypes, generalizations, and the myths about other people groups and people go away. And so my push at the end of the day is to continue to do what we're doing here, and that is to bring people together and let's talk about life, So, okay, and we'll go in our same order there that we did on the introductions. And so your closing statements, and I'll only cut you off if you get too long, all right? So, because we got to go to bed, all right? Adam, you're up.
I'll try to go very short. Thank you, Carlin, once again, and thanks all of you for dialing in and participating. I learned a lot from this. I like your solution, Carlin, of integrating, and I just want to add that if we're not aware of our confirmation bias, and if we're not embracing concepts that challenge our beliefs, then we would never integrate what other people believe with what we believe. So just dovetailing off of what you had to say, and I'm glad that you didn't ask this question that you sent about segregating America, because I actually wrote on here that this is a ridiculous idea and a stupid question. So I didn't want to tell you that it was a stupid question. So I'm glad you didn't ask it in the group, but I had to end with it. And so I got a lot from all of these things. I wrote some other questions. One of the things I never got to mention is how one person can change your whole concept of people. That was from something that Renita said at her very introduction. And so hopefully all of us, I think my paradigm has shifted a little bit, especially interacting with some people that I didn't know previously, and taking it on board. And hopefully we'll have more discussions in the future. And hopefully we can avoid that crazy cycle of disrespecting someone to make them be disrespectful. And then hopefully we can start what's called the energizing cycle of respecting someone else so that they show more love, so that they feel more respect, and then we go around in the reward cycle of respecting somebody even if we feel disrespected, because then our rewards are up in heaven. So I'll end with that idea.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Adam Johns. And we're up to Daryl Wynn.
I tell my mentee to if you find yourself smartest person in your circle, you got to move to another. And so I'm pleased to know that I'm in a smart circle now, and everybody really added to me today. I appreciated everything everybody said. David, I was appreciative of your story about your journey and how you were one way and now another. Joseph, everybody, Kim, Renita, Isabel, Adam, and even Josh. I wish Josh could have came back.
Oh man.
I'm leaving here with I was ambivalent a little bit. I didn't know what to expect, but I want to be part of the next one. I'm more hopeful now. I think this is a starting point, because I think we all need to understand where everybody else is coming from. I think we have to understand how we got here. I think in order to even find a solution, and it's one out there. It's just finding it. It's getting more like-minded people together. It's people who have power to change things. So, and like Adam said, it starts with one. So thank you, everyone.
Outstanding. Great words. Good words, Daryl Wynn. All right, and next up we've got Mr. Joseph Clemens.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for the tremendous discussion we had tonight. This has energized me more than you could ever imagine. I'm in the process of actually writing a book regarding issues along this line. And so that's why I was like talking to Carlin and discussing and getting more ideas for different chapters. But, you know, if your paradigm is not being questioned or shattered every day, then you're not expanding your awareness and your understanding of the universe, of mankind. There are bad and good in society, but we have to embrace the good and bring out or show up the bad for what it is sometimes. And that's a hard process sometimes because it may hurt the other person because they're not understanding they may not be understanding what they're saying is hurtful or mean. So you have to get them to have that aha moment on their own and let their paradigm shift, especially when it comes to the have and have nots, race issues, or any other, I don't agree with what you say. We may not agree, but we need to still be respectful of what that person has to say, and then get an understanding of why they feel that way. What is the root cause? Like Isabel said, let's find the root cause of why we have this issue of race, you know, because you can't solve a problem if you don't know where the problem began. Because if we can work our way backwards, you know, reverse engineer this issue of race, we can find a solution to it. You know, but again, I just want to thank everybody and thank you, Carlin, for having me. And I just enjoy these immensely. It just expands my paradigm, expands my mind beyond measure.
Very good. Outstanding. Yeah, you gave me a new quote. I'll be saying you need to challenge your paradigm. Very good. I like that. All right. And Miss Kimyarda Cruz.
I would like to say, acknowledge my complexion, but don't judge me by it. Erase race, and at the same time, I think as we erase race, we should be erasing racism simultaneously. I think we're going to have to do it simultaneously. And although I recognize, like Isabel said, that the deepest root of everything is grief, I still think, there's part of the solution is eliminating some of the fears. On one side of the fence, eliminating the fear that if you're equal, then that somehow makes me inferior. And then on the other side of the fence, eliminating the fear that if I don't point out my victimhood, then you won't address my oppression. And I think we need to, so I think the solution is, eliminating the fears so that we can eventually get down to eliminating the grief.
Oh, okay. Very much good, Ms. Crooms. Okay. Now we're up to Miss Isabel. We had Joshua there, but he couldn't get back in. I've been talking to him this whole time. He couldn't get back in, so I hate that. So we'll go now to Isabel, the mighty Hunt.
Well, for one, I hope that the documentary that we're working on will be part, at least a small part of the solution in the conversation. A quote from the documentary is, changing the philosophy of cultures and societies starts with the individual changing their hearts and mind. And I think the first thing that we need to change about our heart is the understanding that there are no good or bad people. When we talk about bad and judge them this way, it pretty much means that they are operating within their survival mechanism, and we all do that at different times. If we can let go of the either or, we will also be able to let go of the judgment that comes with the either or, because in the end, what it comes down to is that we are all connected. We're all a reflection of each other. What annoys me about you is a reflection back to what's going on within side of me. What I focus on is something that is going on within of me, within myself. And I think we have to learn that even if we don't agree with people, that doesn't mean that we don't have to like them. There are certain people that I totally don't agree with, but I still can show compassion, not saying this is a bad person, he shouldn't be there, he is just ridiculous, he's a fool, he's an idiot, whatever. Instead of saying that, I can acknowledge, man, either he has gone through really lots of trauma or there's something going on that's much deeper than what we can see. I can show compassion for how you show up, for how you choose to show up. Fear is a lack of trust, and that trust starts within ourselves.
Outstanding. Great words. Great words. I've got the benefit of being able to take this recording and play it back a lot of times, and I will. And you'll have access to it on YouTube soon. Okay. David Unruh.
Okay, Isabel, I just had a paradigm shift. I am now going to say there's people I want to hang out with and people I don't want to hang out with. How about that?
That sounds good, because that is setting boundaries.
And I do agree with Isabel and Kim that I honestly do think fear has a lot to do with racism. I don't think people are inherently racist. I do think fear has a lot to do with that. And Daryl and Joseph, I feel like I connected with you guys because I do really think that in our youth, we were on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think if I got to hang out with you, I think we would be a lot closer in our thoughts and personalities on things than we would even imagine. So if any of you guys are ever in H-Town, let's visit, let's go drink a beer or something. But
you just can't wear that Kansas City jacket. Okay?
I was just saying the same thing. You cannot wear that Kansas City.
Oh yeah, you guys are 49ers, man.
I love everything about you, brother, but you can't wear that KC jacket. I'm sorry.
All right, I will not wear. Okay.
Hey, David, I'm in H-Town. Can I come over? I'm in H-Town.
Yes, Garland, if anybody on the panel comes to H-Town, let's get together.
Daryl from San Francisco.
Yes.
Daryl, I'm a big 49er fan. That's all I was just saying.
Yeah, Kim is. She's a 49er fan living in Atlanta. I don't know how that happens.
I don't know what happened, but I lost my video feed.
Well, we still got you. You hit the wrong button on your. We got you though. You're still there.
Okay.
So don't do anything because we still see you.
All right.
All right. And we'll conclude with the Miss Renita Hills, the world famous Renita Hills, that is, y'all.
Go ahead and speak it into my life. I receive
The world
it.
famous. I can see it too. Ma'am, you're going to be on stages.
I am simply honored and humbled to be part of this panel. I've learned so much. I'm sitting here jotting notes of what you guys have been saying. I love the paradigm shift. I love what you were saying about I don't want to change, don't lose my color, but don't judge me by my color. I never thought about it that way as a new way to look at it. I appreciate that now, but now my mind is trying to figure out a better way to say what I want to say. So you got me thinking. That's both good and dangerous. So watch out. I really appreciate all the input. You gave me more puzzles to help my people when I'm working with my victims and survivors and my young people. You're giving me more pieces to the puzzle so I can be more supportive and helping them to look at people as people and don't judge by color. Don't judge by the color of the skin. Just go ahead and love the person. Love the person. And I'm going to speak for Josh on behalf of Josh. He is like one of the bomb.com people that I know. But I tell you, when you start talking about color and culture, when this first started for him, it was a huge pill for him to swallow. He couldn't get a grip on it. So I'm going to say thank you to all of you for helping he and I to get a better grip on what the differences between color and culture. Our friend George Middleton started us on that. What are you, your color or your culture? I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I don't know, but I'm growing. And because of the conversations we're having today, I'm evolving. Josh is growing and evolving, and we appreciate these conversations. So please, the next time you have one, please have this panel, let me know. And if you ever in, Hoosier Town, come talk to us. We want to hang out with you too.
Cool.
Can David wear his Kansas City jersey over there? Can he come over there?
I don't know about Kansas City. Now,
I've
Minister
never-
Hills will not offer you a beer. Minister Hills will not offer you a
I
beer.
never even thought that somebody was
hang
going
out.
to be from Cali on this panel.
Oh yeah, they're feeling the pain, feeling the pain. Hey,
Enjoy
I just
it. It won't happen again. Enjoy it. It won't happen again.
All right. Not for 50 years.
Hey, this has really been amazing. The information, and if I think everybody's leaving here knowing that they've been added to.
Yes.
Everyone has gained some value here because of what they've heard this evening. And when we talk about what solutions are, I think that this is it. If this can happen, yeah, there's 8 of us, but it needs to happen with us, the 8 of us, and it's got to start somewhere and then lead to somewhere. Because if it can happen with 8, it can happen with 80 or 800 or 8,000 or 8 million. You know, and that's where we got to go in order to make the United States and actually the world a better place. And that's what we do when we commit, as you all have committed. And so this is what we'll do, because we'll meet back with this panel again and talk to people about it. We'll have this video posted. It'll be on YouTube, and we'll market it so that people can see that people who disagree can talk with each other.
Yes.
And I think that'll be the biggest value that we can offer to our country at this point, and it will grow from there. So thank you all again. And
ask Josh to write down, right before he took off, he was going to ask us a question which would have blown our mind, according to him. I would do that next time. I want to know what he wants to say.
Hey, and next time it's going to be easier. I think one thing I've understood is because before I've always used my personal ID for these Zoom meetings, and it's been easy. They just put in my phone number and come in. We'll do that next time so that we don't have a problem, because using this other fancy ID with passwords seemed to have caused some problems for people. And when Josh got kicked out, and he sent me a message and he showed me a screen that said internal meeting and no one else was able to enter. So it must be something he said in the CIA or FBI or somebody's cutting it down.
I think it's because you're recording, Carlin.
So
Wasn't me.
Probably it.
okay. Hey, thank you all once again. I love you all. You're my people. You're my people. I don't care about anything else. You're my people. All right.
See y'all later.
Y'all, thank you very much. You'll be getting your T-shirts in the mail shortly.
All right.
Nice meeting you guys.
Good night, everybody.
All right.